morning. Hey, if you're joining us online, you're here in the room, really glad that you're here. People were asking me about, do we get bonus points for the weather today? I was saying initially no. People were saying I was being stingy. I'll give you half point, I guess. The road's still pretty clear, but give you half point. Give you half point bonus just out of, you made me feel guilty about it. Hey, I'm Charlie, by the way. I don't know if I said that already. I'm the lead pastor here if you're new. Really glad that you are worshiping with us today, that you're visiting here at the Grove. Any way that we can help you, please let us know. Information that, again, that's always relevant, especially in intros like this. I'm a huge Razorback basketball fan, and I've been telling you we're just going to keep wearing Razorback gear as long as the win streak goes. We're 8 games in a row. Number one, Auburn comes to town on Tuesday. I don't even know what next Sunday would be like if we keep this going. Anyways, I'm real excited, and you know, this kind of deal. Very few people, for good reason, have really ever experienced me watching a basketball game. And even if I've got people around me, like I adjust it a little bit because, you know, there's just a lot of emotion, a lot of intensity. You know, this kind of deal is like maybe this is just the healthiest place for me to direct some of this. I don't know. Or maybe it just describes all sorts of weird things that are going on. But anyway, so some of you are curious about that, and I'm not going to tell you anything. But I will tell you this, there's something that I can teach you about what it's like, what I'm like as like a basketball, by telling you the story of my daughter, Lauren. And this was a long time ago. She's 21 now. This is like when she was maybe 7 or 8 or something like that. And we're sitting there. I'm watching a basketball game by myself in the living room. And she walks in, she just kind of goes, "Dad, which one of these teams do we hate?" No question about who we're rooting for or nothing about the game. She just knew that it was very obviously somebody here is that we hate. And so I gave them this kind of handy rule. It doesn't help for everything, but it's kind of handy. If they got blue in their jersey, we don't like them. Right? And we got some Kansas fans, some Duke fans, Florida fans around here. But yeah, I'm talking to you. I'm not, but it's not your team. It's definitely your team. And I was thinking about this, and it'll be very apparent why. Like, it's kind of like, what is it? You know, there's a lot of anger, like, and it almost seems real. You know, I hate that team. I hate that coach. And again, try to broaden it out here a little bit. I mean, we could talk about your favorite politician, or your least favorite politician, your favorite cable news network, or your least favorite cable news network, or your favorite or least favorite character on any number of Bachelor or Bachelorette seasons that have been going on since TV began, right? There's just, I hate them. Wow, like, where does that come from? Where is it? It's honest. Usually it's some perception of a team being more successful than yours, or a team that seems to be taking shortcuts. You know, they're cheating in some way. And again, this applies to any number of reality shows as well. It's like, oh, they're cheating. They're not doing it right. They're doing it the wrong way. Or I don't want them to win. I like this one. And they seem to be doing and just like. It all comes from this idea of, like, me or the person that I identify with or my team, I want them to win. If anybody else is doing well, I like that. Or if they're doing it the wrong way, I don't like that. There's just this thing that gets triggered in us. And this is not a new phenomenon at all, because we're going to be looking at a passage here in James 4. And we're talking about relationships. And last week spent some time just kind of talking about where Jesus says that this is how people are going to know. If people are like, hey, those are Jesus's people. In order for us to be identified as Jesus's people, what he says is, here's how people are going to know: by the way that we love. If we love well, if we love each other well, then they'll know. We just kind of spent some time talking about, like, how do we feel like we're doing as Christians as a whole, as a church, individually, and kind of launching into that. But I think it's very clear, and it's one of these things that you don't really have to spend a whole lot of time talking about. I don't have to defend this statement to you. Seems like there's a lot of anger and hate in the world right now. And it also seems that Christians are not absolving themselves. We're not exempting ourselves from it. We are in it. We are in it. Where does this come from? And again, this is not a new question. This is not the first time anyone has asked this. All we have to do is go to this passage in James chapter 4, starting with verse 1. What causes fights and quarrels among you? We'll just stop there for a second. Great question. And so what we have here with the church that James is writing to, it's obviously has gotten to him that there is some fighting and quarreling going on amongst them. You know, these letters that are written are just letters that one person writes to a group or to another person. And the issues that are brought up, they're not random. They're not just things that just kind of pop into their head, but come from what's going on. So there's obviously a lot of conflict and fights, bitterness, these kinds of things going on here. And he's going to answer this question. What causes fights and quarrels among you? And I don't want to, as we're kind of exploring this, to say this answer that he gives to this question in this moment is the cause of any fight everywhere for all time. But he does generalize it really quickly. Rather than just talking about whatever the specific issues are, he's kind of this broad stroke that may not describe every conflict, every fight that people are having all the time. But I think if we will let him speak to us, I think a significant number and amount of the anger and the frustration and the division that is out there and in here, I think James really hits it pretty well for us. And spoiler warning, you're not going to like it. I didn't like it when I read it. You're not going to like it either, all right? Because it just starts off bad, right? What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? Bro, stop. Right? No. Let me tell you what causes the problems that I've got. And it ain't the things that come within me, it's the things that come within them. It's always their fault, right? Can we all at least agree on that? That it's not ever my fault. It's them. But he gets right to it. And the thing that we don't ever want to necessarily address in a conflict, hey, what's causing these conflicts? Isn't it actually something that's going on inside of you? Not what someone is doing to you, but what is happening inside of you, not inside of them, not what's being done to you. Is it not what's going on inside of you? Verse 2, you desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God, and when you ask, you do not receive, because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. Now, there's a slightly alarming statement that he makes here that is mentioned actually somewhere else in James that I feel like just we need to temporarily address. Basically, what he says is, you desire but you don't have, so you kill. Which implies that there has been a murder of some kind in the church. And he references it again later. And that's just kind of alarming that they've allowed it to get to this point to where someone was either murdered or perhaps had someone else arrested and they were executed. Anyway, it would seem that a death has happened here, that the anger and the division that has gotten there is that significant. But how does James identify it? He says there's these desires that are going on inside of you. You want something, but you don't have it. You covet, you strongly desire something that doesn't belong to you, but you cannot get what you want. Basically, what he's pinpointing here, as far as what the kind of their core issue is, it's a lack of them having. I want something and I can't have it. I want something and I don't have it. I want something and they have it. And that's the core issue. And essentially what he's saying here is that division comes from envy. Division comes from envy. You have something that I want. You have a privilege that I don't seem to have. You are trying to take something that I believe that belongs to me. There is something about this situation that's unfair. And I am on the losing end of it. And it's just not right. And on our most self-righteous days, when we get upset about things, we become advocates for fairness or justice. It's not about me. I just think things should be fair. I'm just trying to bring more justice. And really, what James is saying is like you just want things. You ever been? There's lots of great reasons for you to be in Grove Kids, but there's lots of great reasons to be like in the 2-year-old class, 3-year-old class. I mean, it's just a pure joy. I like, in another lifetime, that's what I'm doing. Like, I'm just gonna hang out. I'm gonna be the 3-year-old teacher every week. They're great. Have you ever seen like a pair of toddlers, pair of 2-year-olds, pair of 3-year-olds fighting over toys? One of my favorite things, and you'll see this sometime, is like one kid will have a toy, and the other kid on the other room wasn't particularly, the toy's been sitting there vacant for like the whole time. One kid picks it up, kid on the other side of the room, well, that toy suddenly became more interesting. And so he walks over there to that kid with that toy, and then the teacher doesn't know what to do. And sometimes you got kind of like a chill, good-natured kid who's like, man, this ain't worth all that. I mean, here you go. And the kid's like, eh. And then suddenly it's not that cool anymore. Kid sets it down. But the other kid picks up another toy. Like, whatever it is that kid has, I want it. But then I have it, I don't matter. It's always about what the toddler doesn't have. And then once I have it, it then becomes about, well, what else don't I have? Toddlers. Sure is great that we grow out of that. I mean, turn on any political debate that you want. Your favorite or your least favorite newscast. And if you will allow yourself to kind of see it with these eyes, I mean, these are the things that we tend to fight about. Somebody has something, and I don't think that it's fair that they have it. I have this thing, and you are trying to get it, but the means by which you are trying to get this thing that I have, I believe are illegitimate or like, I got this way. This is the way you get it. You're trying to get it through some wrong way, and that's wrong. And it's all about who has what. Whether we're talking about money, whether we're talking about power, it's just how it plays out. And we have this sort of attitude then that kind of then, it permeates our regular lives too. And my life then becomes about whether or not I believe that I am getting what I believe that I'm entitled to. A sexual satisfaction in the way that I want. An amount of money that I want. An amount of influence and power or position or house or car or life or family. I believe that I'm entitled. I believe that I should have this. And so it causes me a lot of anger, either at the people that have it and I don't have it, or the people that I believe are keeping me from it. There is some greater, better, more fulfilling, more satisfying life that is just right there. And you already have it. And you're keeping me from it. And so, I live this life like a toddler. Like a 2-year-old who can only notice the toys that other people have. And then even if I were to achieve it, I move on then to the next thing that I don't have. And we live lives far too often with a level of discontentment that is always someone else's fault. Which again, I find James's insight and his thoughts on this, I find them captivating, fascinating, and entirely frustrating all at the same time. Because I say, hey, we're going to talk about conflict resolution today. We're going to talk about the way like, hey, it's about this and you and the way that you talk and the way that this. And he's like, well, I mean, sure. But really, it just comes from forget. It's like what he's saying here, it really doesn't matter what's happening between two people. What he's identifying is not conflict, like not the way that we talk about it, the issues themselves, but is really what is going on in our heart. And that most of this comes down to an attitude that says, if I don't have it, I'm unhappy, and I'm willing to fight with someone about it because of the unfairness or the imbalance of it. And so he continues on, and I promise you guys, this is not getting any nicer. We're not going to get any happier later. Verse 4, you adulterous people. Man, James, here's the deal. We don't preach a lot out of James because we're kind of like a good vibes church. We're just kind of like good vibes. I mean, there's good vibes and sometimes there's difficult vibes. And James full of, come on, bro, vibes. I mean, so anyways, but we can't avoid it forever. And I'm just joking, we have in fact preached on James before. These are jokes. You adulterous people. Don't you know that friendship with the world means enmity against God? Therefore, anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world becomes an enemy of God. Or do you think the scripture says without reason that he jealously longs for the Spirit he has called to dwell in us? But he gives us more grace. That is why scripture says, God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. Again, I mean, he's not pulling punches here. You adulterous people. You are someone who is married and are cheating on the one that you're married to. God is your spouse, you're married to God, and you're cheating on him. That's what you're doing. You are choosing the world over God. You're choosing to be a friend of the world, and if you choose to be a friend of the world, you're now an enemy of God. These are kind of, again, no pulled punches description of what James is saying is happening here. You have this envy in you. You have this coveting. You have this desire for things, and you see what other people have and what you don't, and you see people getting things unfairly, and you don't like that, and you've got all this. And he's like, really, what that boils down to is that you're cheating on God. You are now becoming God's enemy. God opposes the proud. You are now we're in a situation where God is opposing you. So the division, he says, the division is coming from your envy, and your envy comes from worldliness. Now, if you've been around here a while, sometimes I'll reference old school, Sunday school stuff that I learned, or kind of the old school, small southern church that I went to in small town Arkansas, right? And kind of how they just kind of went overboard on some things. And this, sometimes I guess Sunday school teacher was right. Because this is what he's saying. He's like, man, you're choosing to kind of be a partner and a friend of the world. And this idea of worldliness, maybe it's the first time you've heard this idea, but essentially will come down to this. Again, I don't think this is something I have to sell too hard with the way that things are going right now. That there are two sets of values out there. There's at least two. We'll just focus on the two primary ones. There are the values that God has, and there are the values that the world has. There's the values that one should have in order to be someone who is living a life pleasing to God. This is the kind of person that you should be. These are the kinds of things that you should do. This is the kind of heart that you should have if you want to be pleasing to God. And there's another set of values that say, this is how you need to live if you want to be successful in the eyes of the world. And I think by and large, I'm not going to say that there's just zero overlap in the Venn diagram of this, but by and large, they are two very distinct sets of values. Take, mine, fighting, division, conflict. And then what God talks about: peace, contentment, love, self-sacrifice, sacrificial love, giving up things that I believe that I'm entitled to in order to love people well. The world says I gotta hang on to what that everybody's trying to take what's mine, and I gotta fight for what's mine. I gotta keep you away from what's mine. And God says, hey man, take what I have given you to bless the world. We're trying to satisfy ourselves, and God's saying every blessing that you have is intended to bless somebody else. We've got two very distinct sets of values here. And what James is saying is, really, a lot of this comes down to you are choosing to live by the wrong set of values. You're choosing to live a life that says, I'm going to make the focus of my life me getting what I want. And I want to be the best. I want to have the most. And again, we're not just simply talking about finances here. Again, depending on the nature of the relationship, it's influence, it's power. It affects the way that we view our sexuality. If I'm not getting what I want, I'm going to take it. If I'm not getting what I want from this relationship, I'm going to go find it in a different relationship, because I am entitled to things. I'm entitled to this sexual fulfillment. I'm entitled to amount of comfort, of power, of influence, of money, of all of these things. And my life and my eyes, my mind, my brain, my heart, I just can't help but think about that, about what I believe that I'm entitled to. And so now anybody who even brushes up against that becomes an enemy that I've got to fight. You're trying to make me have less. You're trying to make me, I can't. And it comes from, because I believe kind of at the core, the opposite of envy, the opposite of jealousy, of coveting, is contentment. And so what circumstances would have to be true in your life right now in order for you to be content? I am at peace now with God and my life. What circumstances would have to change? Because I think ultimately, and we're going to see, he's going to close this passage out for us here. We're going to look at it in just a second. The hint, the draw needs to be, if God is God and I am right with him and his son gave everything for me and he has given me peace, joy, life in this life and has promised me a perfect, amazing, eternal life beyond this one, then there's absolutely nothing that should have to happen in order for me to not be content. And the lacks that I have in this life, man, I think it's a little disappointing. I mean, I wish things were different. But you can't knock me off of the peace and the joy and the contentment and the life that God has given me. And so we see that here in his answer. Kind of here's what's going to have to happen. Verse 7. Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Wash your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Grieve, mourn, and wail. Change your laughter to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. Good vibes. I mean, it really is. It's a little startling, actually, the language that he uses here. And part of it is James has a very different writing style and kind of a mental approach and kind of than the letters that we most likely or most often read or familiar with, the things that Paul writes or the things that Jesus said. He's definitely gotten more just like straight shooter is the right. I mean, he doesn't gloss over anything. So essentially, what he's saying is like, hey, listen, what's the problem here? The problem is the envy and the selfishness that's going on in your heart. Where does that come from? Well, that comes from the fact that you have allowed the values of the world to determine your values, rather than the things that God is trying to get you focused on. And some of you then are out there, you're just kind of living your lives like, man, I've got it. I've kind of got it all together. I've got things, and I'm doing good, and I'll fight you if you come for mine. But I look around, I'm doing all right. And this is a message very specifically tailored to the people in the church, in this particular church, the ones that had the power, the ones that had the things. And you see that. You read more of James. He's talking about the people who have the power, who have the influence, who have the money in the church. And he's like, you guys think like you're acting like you're all good, but you're not, because there's something wrong in your heart that's causing you to fight. It's causing this discontentment. And it comes, again, from this problem with values. But the healing that you need, the healing comes from God. And there's a sense in which we need to understand that if we find ourselves in a lot of conflict, if we find ourselves where there's groups of people, not just blue jersey basketball teams, but like real life kinds of things, where there are people out there that I hate. There are people out there that just make me so angry. And or there's people around me, I just don't like them. I don't like what they're doing. Or there's these groups of people politically or socially, and I don't like them. I don't want them coming here, and I don't like what they have. I don't like where they live. I don't like what they do. I don't like the people in my office who are getting the promotions. I don't like the people who are getting the raises. I don't like the people with the nicer houses. I just if we find ourselves in this place, and again, I don't think that we are unrepresentative of the world around us. We need to do some inward work. We need to do some inward work. And that healing that he's talking about here, if we are going to get right, if we are going to get past this kind of attitude, it's going to come from God. Submit yourselves then to God. Come near to God. Humble yourselves before the Lord. A recognition that there's a values problem, but it's in me. And I stop focusing on what's going on out there, what's going on with them, what's happening with you. What is going on with me? And there's a story. It's a classic. I don't know how many of you have heard this before, but it was really kind of this classic turning moment in my life. I had graduated from college and spent 6 years working for a college ministry. And I was wanting to transition from that, kind of move into church world, and applied for this job. I've been doing it on an interim basis. I've been going really well. I applied for the full-time job, and I didn't get it. And I had a reaction like a guy who had lived his whole life, that if I worked for it, I always got it. Someone who had just always gotten the things that he'd tried for, always had been the winner. I had a very immature reaction to it. And I was told that I was too young and I didn't have a seminary degree, so I couldn't have the job. So ultimately, Heidi and we made a decision. It's like, well, you can fix both of those problems in one stroke. You can just go to seminary. And you go to seminary, and when you're done, you've got the degree, and by definition, you're older, right? I mean, you go, you come back, when it's over, you're older than what you were when you went in, right? So you can fix both of those things. So we felt really strongly that that's what God wanted us to do. So did. And there's so many things I can tell. I'm now living with my in-laws. I'm delivering pizzas. I got 18-year-old stoners for boss. I'm 28, 29 years old. with a kid and a wife that's pregnant. My car broke down. I had to get rid of it. Bought another car that just kept breaking down. And I had this assignment for one of my classes. It was a spiritual formation class, which felt very weird to me at the time. I called it it was kind of like touchy-feely Christianity. I came here to learn, and you're trying to get me to be in touch with my feelings, which is really weird. I didn't come to seminary for you to tell me to get in touch with my feelings. So we had this assignment where I was supposed to get alone and do some certain things, whatever. And I was like, I hadn't done it because what's the point? Is this going to be on the test or whatever, right? But I was like, man, I guess I got to do something. So on the way to seminary, I stopped. I just left a little bit early. I stopped at this roadside park and to work on this assignment, trying to get in touch with what I was feeling. So let me tell you, where it ended was me screaming at God, screaming out loud, crying. Because I thought in my mind, and I said this to him, God, we had a deal. I work hard, I do what you ask me to do, and you make sure everything in my life goes good. And you are breaking the deal. I'm screaming this top of my lungs. Be assured there was no one else at this roadside park. It was just me. I'm screaming this. And I've got 2 audible voice stories. I'll tell you the other one another time. This is one of the times where I would say that I actually heard an audible voice from God. It was so quiet. Such a low whisper. I never made that deal with you. I'd been living life believing that I was entitled, and that the people who were denying me things or keeping me from things, they were enemies, and that it was God's job to make sure I had everything that I thought that I wanted. And there was all of this anger and rage and sadness and confusion because of all the things that I had learned. Peace, joy, trust, contentment weren't on the list. So when I read a verse that says, wash your hands, you sinner, purify your hearts, grieve, mourn, and wail, I know what that means. Because I had spent way too much of my life intermixing what the world says is successful and the inward life that God was wanting me to have. And in a moment, I humbled myself. And in the 21 years since then, I would say in a lot of ways I'm still learning it, but honestly it would be a story of God lifting me up, of teaching me a different way of living life, of teaching me a different way of peace and joy and contentment and connection with other people. So we're going to spend some time in the rest of this relationship series talking about things that are a lot more traditional to our relationship series. Times when interpersonal relationships can be tough and we don't know how to deal with it, getting some good advice and help on how to navigate relationships when they just get a little off. But before we get into that, I think it's important for us to do a different type of work. To say that a lot of this, a lot of the discontentment, a lot of the anger, a lot of the conflict, a lot of the division comes from inside of here. And let us be a people who are willing to humble ourselves, to wash our hands, to come near to God, and allow Him to do the work that we need to do to release the anger, release the envy, release the discontentment, and put our hope and faith and trust only in Jesus Christ that God has sent. And the peace and the life and the hope that He wants us to have, regardless of our circumstances, both in this life and in the next. Let's pray.